Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Four Guys Talking About AI. And as you can see today,
It's just two guys.
it's two guys. Two of the four guys are off on vacation. So it's me today, Greg Sterling and Neil Polachek. And we have really, I think, a lot of interesting stuff. Andy always says a lot of stuff happened in AI this this week. And it's really always a big week in AI, so we don't even need to say that. But there's a number of really interesting things that we're going to try and touch on today. Here they are. Basically, we're gonna lead off with the kind of semi-controversial Claude World Cup ad that sort of presented both dystopian and utopian visions of AI. That it's pretty interesting. We're going to talk about the AI backlash in data centers and whether that's going to spill over into some of the new products coming out and use cases for AI. How will that kind of AI backlash and maybe AI fatigue, reduce demand for those products? Then, arguably, the most important topic today is, there was just a new Chinese open source model, Kimi K3, and it outperforms Anthropic. And these Chinese open source models in particular, and open source generally, are putting an enormous pressure now on OpenAI and Anthropic and other companies because they are as good or almost as good as these top tier frontier models, but they cost only a fraction of them. And corporate America is starting to embrace them, and it really is going to have an impact on OpenAI and Claude's pricing. Pricing discretion, right? Neil has some notes from the field that are pretty interesting, and if we have time, we're going to talk about some of the latest research on AI and its impact on search behavior. So, Neil, you saw the ad, so why don't you lead off with your impressions?
Well, I mean, let me just first say that I use Claude every day in my own, whether it's for work or for a recipe. I made a summer fruit galette the other night. Used the recipe from Claude. Outstanding. So I'm using it every day. I thought that it was the juxtaposition of sort of the despair and sort of the sadness with the benefits and the good stuff was an interesting way for Anthropic to portray, like, they get the reality of today's world.
It was not just about AI. The sort of despair segment was really about a lot of social problems.
About life. No, it was broadly about life, and they weren't like hiding behind some, oh, look how great life is, and you've got these new tools. I mean, they were showing sort of the challenges of life, and at the same time trying to juxtapose that against the benefits perhaps of using these tools. And I think that companies that, when we've said this many times, companies that are authentic create trust, and trust creates loyalty. And Authentism, authentic portrayal of things, people do get. They do connect to that.
I think you just invented a word, Authentism. You should capture that domain.
I will.
Maybe it's already a word, but well, I agree that I think there's something smart here, in that they recognize people have very ambivalent feelings about AI, if not outright hostile feelings, and they're kind of acknowledging that and then sort of talking about AI as a tool that people can use to improve their lives or address some of these societal problems. And companies that sort of run around trying to portray the world that they live in and the impact of their product on the world as wholly positive are in a way gaslighting everybody, and they're also kind of naive to think that users don't see that clearly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have the ad in the show notes for those of you that didn't see it. It's a 90-second ad.
I would also add to that I think it ran during the World Cup, right? That ad.
Yes, yeah. I didn't see it live. I saw it on YouTube.
I didn't either, but I will say that I didn't grow up as a soccer fan. I didn't grow up in the era of soccer and all that. But the Argentina England game was some of the best sports I've watched on TV in a long time. It was really exciting.
And England got robbed by the failure to fault Argentina for a lot of their egregious physical behavior.
They got defensive. This is a lesson in business. When you get defensive because you think you're ahead, you're more than likely to get disrupted.
To be conservative, right? Yeah. You seize up.
That's right, and that's what they did. They started getting defensive. They took out all of their sort of offensive players, put in their defensive players. Then it got tied. Now they can't. Now they have no offense to. So it was really fascinating. Just in a lot of ways, and you apply that to like the business world and companies that get defensive about their market position, about their
protecting their lead.
That's protecting their lead are bound to lose their lead. It's inevitable. And I think
that's the whole innovator's dilemma, right? Yeah. I mean, people who are fixated on and focused on protecting revenues and their cash cow will be disrupted by insurgents.
Yep. So I think it's such a, I mean, sports does mimic life in so many ways. And it's such a great example of life and the business world. It's all the same ultimately.
Yeah. So let's move on to the data center and the AI backlash issues. There was a cover of The Economist saying the AI backlash is only getting started. I mean, it's been going on for a while. It's been building momentum, and it's showing up in localities, municipalities, different local governments and state governments, in the case of New York, rejecting AI data centers. AI data centers cause pollution. They consume a lot of water, and people increasingly are taking a kind of NIMBY attitude, not in my backyard, to them and blocking them successfully.
I got a lot to say about sort of that whole thing. Here's the first thing. The Economist cover story, right? They know that there are a lot of people traveling. It's good. It's like clickbait, but in the magazine racks in the airport magazine stores, So that's one reason why I think it was that. The other thing is that, this notion of water. I play golf. There's a golf course behind me.
Hence the golf course background, yes.
And golf courses are very large water users. Okay. And like this goes to a whole host of issues around why we're not desalinating the ocean, why we're not putting money into desalinating so that we have water, because clearly the globe is warming up. There's no debate. Like, let's use AI to fix these kind of things. Like, how do we use AI to sort of improve the economics of desalination so that then we can have more water to run the plants, the data centers that AI is going to, I mean, it's all connected.
Well, I think the problem has been, I mean, there are definitely environmental impacts from AI data centers, but the problem has been the way these AI companies have presented themselves to the market. And that has been, to use the word again, naive in a certain sense. And people now see them as hostile to their lifestyles, to their livelihoods. And they have not, the OpenAI and ChatGPT have not focused as readily on how this is going to help people in their daily lives, how this is going to help solve these large societal problems. There's been some talk of that, but it's much more been about job displacement and much more focus on the accumulation of enormous amounts of wealth by the companies that are the individuals and the companies that are controlling these AI foundation models.
Well, I think it goes back to the ad we were looking at earlier about, Anthropic at least gets that there's this angst out there, and they're trying to to maneuver through a lot of landmines, and, and I think it's unfortunate that we spend so much, that there's so much press now written about the data centers, and they're employing a lot of people. That's a good thing. They'll bring some jobs. Not It's not like a factory level of employment once they're up and running, because they're basically autonomous. But I just think that all these pendulums, they go like this. We go through this stuff, and maybe it's our new culture, because everything's so fast. The pendulums feel like they're swinging faster too now. Oh, AI is great. Oh, AI is bad. Oh, AI is, like, we're just.
Yeah, I mean, I think the news cycle sort of is so accelerated, and it's just kind of almost impossible to deal with. But and that may be accelerating some of the societal reactions to things. But I think there's a linkage between billionaires now, with it, which at least in the United States are a sore subject for most people. The redistribution of wealth upward, the accumulation of unprecedented levels of wealth by Elon Musk and others, and AI and data centers, right? So the idea is that here's this inequitable distribution of wealth. Here's AI, which is going to take people's jobs. Whether or not it's actually doing that, that's the perception. And that those two things have been linked together, and it's really kind of poisonous, I think, in the popular mind. People are very angry and frustrated, and these are two targets that they're taking their frustration out on.
And yet the data says more and more people are turning to these tools, at least OpenAI and ChatGPT and Claude via Anthropic via Claude, to do their life stuff.
Well, that's totally true. That's totally true. Now, people use them with ambivalence, or they use them for discrete use cases that are valuable, but they don't like the idea of these things. I don't want a data center near me. I don't want, I don't want to
Well, I
potentially
don't want a
lose my job.
prison near me either, and I don't want a big, I don't want affordable public housing next to me either. I mean, nobody wants anything near them. That's just, so they.
Well, that's not the entirety of it, but that's a big chunk of it.
NIMBY, not in my backyard. Good in your backyard, not in my backyard.
Let's talk about whether this kind of generalized AI hostility, AI fatigue. For example, I see a lot of people in my social media feeds say, Threads, which is one of the social sites that I use, has a feature called Dear Algo, where you can request that you see more or less of something.
I'll have to try that. I didn't know that.
It's interesting. So, I don't know if it works or not, but I see a lot of people saying, they use it as a kind of protest thing. Like, I don't want to see anything more about this topic or that topic. And frequently AI, in one form or another, is in that request. And so will this kind of generalized ambivalence, hostility, fatigue, impact, products that are starting to emerge that are AI centric? So, or specific AI use cases. Just to take a couple of examples, fast food chain McDonald's and Taco Bell before it replaced the human in the kind of ordering kiosk, the voice of God. What can I get for you today? With AI as an order taker. Taco Bell, I think, has removed that, but McDonald's is going forward with that. Are people going to try and, stump or punk the AI to mess with it? Are they going to acclimate to it? Are they going to resist it? That's one example. Meta has had relatively good success selling its AI glasses, which are co-branded with Ray-Ban, and they have, I think, a couple other partners now. They've sold many thousands of units. It's been the most successful version of this product to date. Google has one. There are other companies that have smart glasses. And way back in the old days when Google Glass first came out a bunch of years ago, ultimately people rejected users who were wearing it because it was goofy, it looked awkward, and there was a kind of a social pariah thing that happened, and it died. The product died. These glasses look more normal, they're more affordable, but there's a growing reaction against them because they're perceived to be a sort of an AI surveillance tool. And then we've got OpenAI and SpaceX that are going to come out with hardware devices. OpenAI is rumored to be building a smart speaker like your Alexa device, wearables of different sorts. I don't know exactly what that looks like. And then they have a smartphone replacement. And SpaceX apparently is working on a smartphone replacement. People despise Elon Musk. Is that going to show up in resistance to the product? This is an interesting question because these products could be very interesting. They could be compelling in certain ways, but is social hostility going to blunt their success?
First of all, I think that Taco Bell has bigger problems.
Well, now it does.
Yes.
Now it does.
And how do we deploy AI to identify the virus that people are getting that's in the food source from Taco Bell? I mean, that's a legit place to apply AI.
So in fairness to Taco Bell was kind of the initial entry point, but it's been traced back to bagged lettuce.
Yes, I know, but that's what I'm saying. How do we get the farming industry to adopt AI tools to identify,
to minimize the risk?
Yeah, to minimize the risk. I mean, that there's a great use case, right?
Right.
Because we don't have food inspectors
Safety
anymore. We do in California, but in a lot of states they don't have them anymore because it's too much government regulation. So that's number one. Number two, on the ordering stuff, like when Domino's went to you can only order online, you can't talk to a human anymore. They reduced their error rate considerably because I can check pepperoni and person is not misinterpreting that I said I wanted peppers, not pepperoni, right? So they didn't stop giving away a bunch of pizzas because if I check pepperoni, it's on me. If they check peppers and I wanted pepperoni, it's on them.
Well, and it reduces people coming back to them and saying, "Hey, I want my money back."
That's right. So isn't this better? Isn't an AI, isn't a tool that can capture what I want better? And I mean, we seem to live with online ordering. What's the difference between online ordering and ordering through an agent?
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that reducing errors, we have this Mexican restaurant in our extended neighborhood that we used to go to all the time, and it was always very difficult to get through to them. There was no online ordering, and there were frequently mistakes. So I wouldn't discover that stuff until I got home. They neglected to include this ingredient or that, and it was very frustrating. So I was kind of longing for some online system that would reduce those errors.
Because you can see the person in the restaurant on the phone trying to write your order
the noisy
down,
restaurant,
getting three other people to yell at them. I mean, there's havoc. There's chaos.
Right, but there's a difference between the kind of objective information that you're talking about with reducing error rates, kind of creating greater efficiency for the organization, and this other thing, which is the kind of zeitgeist, the reaction against that. So it might be the case that somebody coming through that drive-through is going to have a better experience than if a human were there. There are people who are vandalizing robots. I don't know if you've seen any of this video, but people are angry, right? There's a lot of anger in the society, and people are. I saw a video of a guy. You know what flock cameras are? You're familiar with those?
No.
Flock cameras are traffic surveillance cameras.
Oh,
and they exist in a lot of states. And there was a compilation video that I saw of a guy vandalizing these cameras. I mean, it may be a political objection, it may be general hostility. He was cutting the poles and toppling these cameras. And so there's the audience reaction it may be that the product works, but do we feel as a society like we don't want these things because they're intrusive or they're displacing humans or we just hate them in general?
Look, I mean, the cameras. I mean, the London is full of cameras. They were sort of the first place to really deploy cameras at scale. And, I mean, they catch people who do bad things that way. Is that a bad thing? I mean,
Well, so that's a whole philosophical debate that we don't necessarily want to get into today about the ethics or the morality or the desirability of having cameras everywhere in public versus private spaces.
they haven't put one in my house yet. Okay. But if it's down at the street corner where, and there's a robbery and they can spot the person, yeah, it's more morality debate for next time. I
Well, you could argue that your smartphone is a surveillance device, and now
absolutely.
AI is a surveillance device, and the
Which gets
police.
to those devices you were talking about in the lead up to this particular topic, and all these devices that are coming out. Those are all surveillance devices. And why these companies are going to try and replace this thing? This is a camera. This is first and foremost a camera and a personal tracking device. Oh, and I get email on it and I can message, but it is really a camera and a tracking device. So, and we all seem pretty comfortable with these phones. We don't leave home without them.
Right, but most people are unaware of the degree to which you can be tracked and surveilled in terms of what you do on the handset and simply carrying the handset itself.
Well, and that's how Apple positions themselves as being more private, sort of having a stronger set of privacy policies than others. I just, we talked about this before the show started, Greg. I just don't know where glasses are going, and meta glasses and AI glasses. I mean, if they're going to help me hit the golf ball better, I might wear them.
And there might well be very specific use cases where they're beneficial to people, but the idea that Meta is pushing that you just wear them all the time whenever you move through society, those people who are wearing them at the coffee house or on the date, right? Imagine this scenario. Woman shows up for a date, dude has the Meta surveillance glasses on. That date is effing over, right? I mean,
Probably.
this guy is a stalker, creep, weirdo, incel if he shows up in those glasses.
Yeah, I just don't. I've never gotten the whole glasses thing, and I still don't, because I just don't get it. But that's me.
And I think that any device that Elon Musk puts out into the world that has Elon Musk adjacent branding is dead on arrival, unless it is the most transformative thing that has ever been created. I think it's just dead in the water. It's the Cybertruck of smartphones. It's like nobody is going to buy it except his minions, because he's so badly mismanaged his PR and whole public image and his decisions that he's made. I mean, the guy, can you imagine, like, oh yes, I've got the, it used to be the case that smartphones were a status symbol. I've got the newest Android phone, or I've got the newest iPhone, and people were impressed, and it's like, oh, let me see that or whatever. Somebody carrying one of these SpaceX devices is going to be, it'll be like, that's a statement about your politics. And that will be desirable to some people and very undesirable to a lot of people. And this is the problem, is that we're not judging the devices on their own merit. They have all this sort of symbolic value attached, or value is not the right word, but this sort of symbolism attached to them because of the politics, because of the way these companies have conducted themselves, which I think is unfortunate.
I mean, I see dozens of Teslas out on the road. Dozens, dozens and dozens. Maybe it's Marin County because that's where I live, but I don't think those people are embarrassed by driving
Yeah, but
those cars.
you don't see that many Cybertrucks though.
No, because it's an ugly, useless vehicle.
All right. Let's talk about what is probably the most important topic today, and we're just going to sort of talk about it superficially here, and we'll follow up in subsequent episodes. There's a number of things going on in the market, and one is the high cost of using these frontier models, ChatGPT and Claude. Enterprises aggressively embrace them. Let's do token maxing, and then they got these huge bills, and there was this sticker shock. And now everybody's sort of scrambling to figure out: do we ration usage? Do we go to cheaper models? Do we use open source?
Do we go back and hire people?
Right, and people are being hired back. That's right.
Yes,
Because in many cases it's cheaper to use them than to use Claude to do something. And so what's happening simultaneously, and China very smartly has its whole AI strategy, or the dominant AI strategy in China, is open source. And so there are all these open source models running around, and more recently, especially with the recent release of Kimi K3, have caught up to the most advanced US based AI models. So many of these Chinese models are as good or almost as good, or in a couple of cases maybe better according to certain benchmarks, than ChatGPT or Claude. And this is going to precipitate some, send shockwaves through the system. For one, just as enterprises are looking for cheaper tools, they're going to gravitate toward these open source models. That's going to put enormous pricing pressure on Claude and OpenAI. Suddenly, their ability to recoup these billions and billions and billions of dollars of investment through fees and charges, and seat licenses, is going to be under pressure. And there's also this notion that ultimately these tools just become very commoditized, and people gravitate toward the most cost-effective plural models, or models plural, as the case may be. There's a lot of complicated dynamics here, but at the highest level, this could, enormously pressure these US-based companies, and even trigger a market correction or recession, as the market loses confidence in the ability of these companies to recover to generate revenue.
I think we'll see the government put a stop to using those models.
You mean just blanket no Chinese models at all?
Because all we're doing is fueling the Chinese success in AI over ours. And I think there'll be people in Washington who are going to go, wait a second, we have, for the last probably 50 years, one of our key strategic guideposts or key
Objectives.
well, not objective. Our strategic asset has been our technology in this country. Developing software, all that stuff that's gone down in the valley and elsewhere in this country. And I don't think we're going to sit here and watch China take sort of the leadership role. And I think people, like very powerful people, will go to Washington and put an end to it.
I think you could argue that the lead has already shifted, or at least there's, China has caught up, if not gone ahead of the US. One thing that is a very valid concern, I think, given the adversarial nature of US and China, is that using these models in many cases gives the model owner access to the data. Right. So sensitive corporate data. This could be a backdoor into corporate espionage. People will be sensitive to that, but there are many security issues. So I do agree that there will be some effort to cut off usage by American companies of these models. But for the time being, American businesses are racing to embrace them.
Yeah, I think that will be a short fuse, and I think the powers that be in technology and in places like OpenAI and Anthropic and even AWS and all those places, they'll be in Washington saying, we need to put an end to this. This is
Well,
not going
because
to.
it's a direct threat to their economic well-being.
Well, but they're
I
going to
mean,
argue.
the
They'll argue it as a direct threat to national security.
of course they will argue that it's a threat to national security, and an argument can be made for that, but
Right.
that is partly disingenuous on their part, because they will be pushing that angle to safeguard their economic interests, which are the real motivators in this
And
case.
jobs and the market. I'm
They
look,
don't they'll be talking about jobs. Now suddenly they'll be saying, "Oh, we have to defend jobs, so we got to get these
right,
Chinese AI models out of here." They'll be saying jobs, and they'll be talking national security, but
right.
it's really about their economic self-interest. That's really what
Well,
it's about.
they're closely tied, that's for sure. There's a there's a pretty tight connection between those.
Okay, so now we want to shift to the notes from the field, our little feature here, which is about hands-on usage of AI in different
Well,
contexts.
it was just a really interesting example. We have a lawyer. We got a note from the law firm saying, "Hey, we're using AI. Just want to let you know." And it didn't say we're reducing our the fees or like the hourly rates going down of our lawyers because they can do a lot more with less time. There's no indication that it's going to save us anything. And yet, and they say, and if you use AI, you might be giving up your
Privilege.
confidentiality,
Yeah, your
uh,
privilege.
your privilege. And I just thought the note was fascinating. I shared in the notes just how it was the summary, the AI summary of the email that we got from the law firm saying that they're now using AI in their process. Anyway, I just think it's a real tangible evidence of the impact of AI and how it's going to impact everything. And there are implications everywhere for this thing called AI in every walk of life. And I just think that, I think it'd be neat if there were more stories out there about the good stuff that's happening.
Well, there are good stories. There are good stories. They're just being overshadowed by the negative stuff.
Right. Right. And I think,
But 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 how is this note that you got from the lawyer a good story, Neil?
no, well, if they use it because they don't have to, they something that would have taken them an hour before now takes them a half an hour.
But did they say that to you
No,
in the
they don't
note?
say that. No, they don't say that. And they don't say take our stuff, put it into ChatGPT so you can understand it in layman's terms. They don't say anything like that.
Let me just add a little bit of perspective to that. So the reason that they're disclosing this to you is for liability cover. It's a
Of course.
CYA move.
Oh,
So they're
right.
saying they're going to use it because everybody's going to use it, and they want to disclose it so they preempt any kind of malpractice liability should
And
an
we can
outcome.
opt out of them using it on our behalf.
That's an ethical thing for them to do, and that's good. Um, but they're trying to cover themselves in the event that there's some screw up, malpractice, something falls through the cracks, which has happened a lot with legal uses of AI. They are telling you that if you use AI in the context of a
Of the
lawsuit,
lawsuit.
you may lose your attorney-client privilege protection, and that's something that the courts have already determined. So to the extent that you're uploading a bunch of sensitive information to AI, you might lose that privilege, and that's important for them to let you know. So they're
Right.
not simply being hypocritical saying, "We can use it, you can't."
No, they're
But
trying to protect us too. I understand that.
right, but they're being a little opaque about how it's being used, because they don't want to raise more questions than they want to answer. So if they start saying, we're going to use it, we're going to let our paralegals use it, but the lawyers aren't going to use it, or the lawyers are going to use it in this case, but they're not going to use it in this other case, then you would say, hey, why aren't my fees going to be less? or hey, are you sure that they're going to be as qualified to do this? That the work product is going to be as good. So they want to be sort of ethical, but they don't want to invite too many questions.
And they want to have it both ways. And I think the thing about the client using it's kind of curious. I understand the privilege issue, but I think one of the pillars of the legal profession is to make what they do so arcane to the layperson that they have to rely on that lawyer to understand what the heck is going on in there. And so we can't ever access their own language, right? The lawyerly talk up here that none of us, except people like you, understand or want to understand. I mean, I think it's it's sort of a business model protection approach too. I really do believe that.
Yeah, I think that that's partly correct. I mean, jargon creates insiders and outsiders, right? And technical terminology,
That's right.
and you can continue justifying your fees because what you're doing is inaccessible to a layperson. But I think that AI does, speaking of good use cases, really level the playing field to a high degree in things like finance and accounting and legal and healthcare to some degree. I
Totally.
mean, I can tell you that I have a chronic inner ear condition, and I've been to 4 doctors who have not diagnosed it. They've said it could be this, could be that, could be this other thing, could be this other thing still, and just modify your lifestyle and manage it. And I was having an extended conversation with ChatGPT about symptoms and about different remedies, potentially different treatment strategies, and I got a lot more information from ChatGPT than I did from any of these doctors.
Right. And that's my point about this note about, well, and if you use it for this legal stuff, you might be in trouble. Like they don't want you to.
They don't want you to understand what they're doing.
That's exactly my point, Greg. They don't really want you to understand it because they make money when their language is impenetrable by the common person.
If you go to represent yourself in court other than small claims court, if you have a complex matter and you're getting sued or you're trying to sue somebody, you're going to use a lawyer because that's too much of a risk for you. But
Right.
if you want to draft a simple contract, if you want to do certain types of estate planning, if you want to understand certain legal issues that you're dealing with, these AI tools are enormously helpful. If you corporate formation, maybe you don't need to hire a lawyer. There's a lot of use cases where previously people needed lawyers to do things that they no longer really do. And that's something that I think is scary to a lot of, small practices and a lot of lawyers out there.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was fascinating.
Yes, it's very fascinating. We did have another item about AI kind of changing search behavior, but I think it's an interesting topic. I mean, I'll give you a little preview, even going back on what I just said without getting into it too much. So there's been a raging debate about, is AI usage reducing search behavior? And the short answer is yes and no. And there's a bunch of interesting findings that show that search volumes are still comparable to what they were before AI, or even growing in some cases, but that how people use search, how people use AI is definitely changing. And we can just talk real quickly about ourselves because I think you and I are examples of this. Before AI, you would go to Google, obviously, for everything as a starting point to learn about things. And now, Neil, what do you do instead of Google? You talked about it
Claude.
earlier.
I use Claude.
100% is Claude.
100%.
Right.
So,
And so my situation is similar but slightly different. I use Google for certain things, maybe 20% of the as much as I used to use it, very radically reduced. I use it to look up specific brands. I use it to go to specific things that I already have determined or know exist. I don't use it for discovery. I use the local stuff pretty much the same as I used to, and that's in the 20%. I use ChatGPT in all the cases I would have used Google before, and I use Claude for sort of more interactive stuff, deeper analysis and work, and brainstorming. And I think that this kind of shift is happening everywhere. Google is still being used, widely used, and Google is being used as a complement to AI in many cases, but it's not being used in identical ways that it was before the advent of generative AI. And there's a lot of sort of denial about that in digital marketing communities, dismissing
Why is
AI
that?
adoption.
Why is there all that denial, Greg?
Well, because I think it makes everybody's job much more complicated. People don't know what's working as much in AI. There's a lot of uncertainty there. It's harder to track AI usage. You can't really track it as you can search. We'll talk about it more because the specific findings are really fascinating. But thanks again, everybody, for listening. Like and subscribe, as Andy says, and
You
tell
did
your
a
friends.
great job of standing in for Andy. Well
Thanks.
done.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about us, and give us feedback. We'd love to hear your opinions about the episode or these
And hit that
podcasts.
like button.
Right. And we'd love to hear your feedback on topics. There's so much to talk about. We can't get to everything and we have to make choices, but we'd love to hear your feedback on that. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next week.